You're back. Good. What can I help you with? More lessons in basic reality? My favorite part of the day. Go ahead, ask me anything. Are you sure you're sure? Your colleague seemed adamant. Okay. The Pale is the most dominant geological feature of the world, Detective. The separative tissue between the islas. It is the inter-islary mass. Isla is a Messinian word for a continent of matter, enveloped on all sides by the Pale. Also, isolation, or landmass. We used to believe there was only one. In the last 4 centuries, we have discovered 7. Windy, Seol, Samara, Ilmara, Grad, Katla, and this, Insulinde. An oceanic isla. It comprises mostly of water. Muindi is the largest, Katla the coldest, Insulinde the bluest. What can I say? Each is perishing and dear. Achromatic, odorless, featureless. The Pale is the enemy of matter and life. It is not like any other, or anything in the world. It is the transition state of being into nothingness. No, Detective. We're safe. It begins there, 6,000 kilometers to the north, and even more to the south, east, and west. You are in the middle of the Isla.
As your gaze instinctively turns north, a small black pit opens up in your stomach.
Yes. That is enough. Many cities are built much closer. An uproar of matter, darling. Rising into the Pale. Rolling. Evaporating even. A great vision. The area of transition between the world and the Pale is called porch collapse. Imagine a grey coronal mist, cold vapor marked by spores of an opportunistic microorganism, a mold that's adapted to grow at the edge of the unrest. It's the most disco thing you will ever see. It's difficult to describe, or even measure. Something whose fundamental property is the suspension of properties. Physical, epistemological, linguistic. The further into Pale you travel, the steeper the degree of suspension, right down to the mathematical. Numbers stop working. No one has yet passed the number barrier. It may be impossible. Oh, it is so difficult for us. It is possible to force dimensions on the Pale. In modern times, we can even compress its latitude, bouncing radio waves from one end to the other, shortening the path. But it is still hard for humans to navigate the Pale without getting lost, or having our minds damaged. Extensively. Some say the damage stems from extreme sensory deprivation. Others argue that Pale somehow consists of past information that's degrading, that it's rarefied past, not rarefied matter. They call it the blend over of the self. The Pale does not only suspend the laws of physics, but also the laws of psychology, maybe history even. The human mind becomes over-radiated by past.
Who says and who argues?
The logical positivists say, the dialectical materialists argue. It feels terrible. Absolutely terrible. International standards strictly limit civilian travelers to 6 days of Pale exposure per year.
It's more for her. Way more.
No, Lieutenant Dubois. I'm entreprenetic business class. I'm cleared and trained for 22 days of Pale transit annually. Up to my gills, officer. Entreprenetics is the scientific study of the Pale, or a recent iteration of it by way of Grad. The study of the Pale reaches back 6,000 years. The Pericarnassians called it the Western Plain.
They had not traveled the entire circumference of the Pericarnassian Super E Solar. It was not merely in the west, it was everywhere, even then, surrounding them.
There are signs of pretermodern crossings. Successful navigation of the Pale relies not just on technical know-how, but intensive psychological preparation. Some of these tactics have been known for thousands of years. Nothing. We remain powerless before the Pale. The only real advance in Pale transit is the speed with which an aerostatic craft can pierce it. Less exposure leads to less effects later. Hybrid airships, Detective. Conventional rotors or jet engines no longer add velocity after the point of reference for motion is suspended, once you've crossed from near Pale to far Pale. In essence, we throw them in and they come out the other end. If we throw them precisely. Then they don't.
Gone, like a skipping stone beneath the surface.
The Pale outweighs reality 2 to 1. There is more Pale than there is matter, and the ratio is slipping. What do you think, Detective? Precisely. One of the few measurable effects of the Pale is that it is expanding at an unknown rate. An intuitive conclusion of that development is that one day the Pale will cover everything. But this sort of talk is mostly left to extremists. Most people, and indeed most private and government sector organizations, entire civilizations and religions even, find handy ways to ignore or downplay that knowledge. I suggest you do the same.
Off we go. You see the hanged man's mouth open.
One and all. They say Pale is death, but for the universe.
Why should we just leave, and the world get left behind?
Yes, sweet reality. But before we do, tell me, Detective, is this the first time you're hearing this? Do you really not remember anything? Then tell me, what do you think of the Pale? You really didn't know. This does not spell good for the investigation, Detective. If you don't know even this, then... I hope so. I truly do. If I may suggest, hold on to your colleague, Kitsuragi. I ran a check on him and he is very competent. In the meanwhile, you have me. I will assist you in any way I can, even if we have to do it one basic term at a time. Glad to have been of assistance. The little that I know. Anything else?
As you hold it in your hands, it makes an uncomfortable crunching sound. There is no why. The bed is still cold from the broken window, and not too inviting, but it's yours. You've earned it. It's not easy, but your bones are so tired from what feel like weeks of work on the case. You have to try. After what feels like hours, you feel you might be sleeping.
Thoughts, baby. A million little lights in the dark. You're one fine instrument, brother. All those faces and all those names. All that laughter and screaming and scheming around. Every corner and every street.
Recorded in you forever on ferrotape.
On and on it goes, for untold hours. At the disco where you first asked her to dance. Rising, rising, above the dark curvature, the great wingspan of sleep, studded with stars.
Behold, there are millions of them down there. The first time, the last time, the smoke in her mouth, the plotted flowers, the faces turning, changing.
It's the world, Harry boy, and you're made of it. Every day you're out there, you make more of yourself from it. I'm afraid you can't be unmade now. You can never forget this shit.
Beautiful. It's stuck on loop, whirling, spitting out words and images.
You're the son of the world again. Harrister, a ceaseless agent, picking up litter and old newspapers, collecting your little bubblegum wrappers and idiotic picture postcards. Meaningless, meaningless keepsakes.
Reading your awful letters and recalling things, aren't you? The endless names of the world. An address book you are. The map of a city.
You'll go insane if you keep going like this. One more day, and you'll be in the loony bin. I just know you will. And for what, brother man?
For the working class.
Solving your little crossword puzzles. Doing your tasks. Crossing names off lists. Trying to become some sort of world detector. It won't make it okay. It won't put smoke back in her mouth. There he goes again. He's a real political animal, our Harry. He still doesn't see that it's the world changing around him.
He's got no idea what he's in for.
'Cause only love can break your heart. Beep, beep, beep. The alarm is ringing, Harry. The disco circus goes on and on. You barely slept 3 hours last night.
Do it for the picture puzzle. Put it all together. Solve the world, one conversation at a time. Rise and shine, comrade. It's time to get to work. Despite all the thinking you've been doing, only 0.0001% of communism has been built. It's too great a task to undertake alone. You're going to have to get organized. Your level of personal upkeep is irrelevant. All that matters is your commitment to building the World Republic. You must seek out your revolutionary brothers and sisters. Find out how much communism they've built. Then, together, maybe you'll be able to build as much as 0.0002% of communism. But it won't be easy. Decades of persecution by coalition authorities have driven the remaining communists of Martinaise underground. They live underground. These communists aren't men. They're mole people. Possibly, if you have been, it's only because you're a double agent acting in furtherance of your long-term objectives. Listen to this. Do you really think you're the kind of person an underground communist cell would entrust with a mission that requires such discretion? Regardless, what's past is past. You need to look forward to the work of building communism for all. They're not mole people. They're your comrades in the eternal class struggle. It's your task to find and join them. Just between us, you may want to lay off this grind up the bourgeoisie stuff. It's a bit off-putting, even to fellow communists. Let your nose guide you, detective. No, we meant your nose, as in that swollen muck detector in the center of your face. It just happens to be perfectly calibrated for sensing communists. We really have no idea what they're talking about. There's no linkage between ideology and olfaction. Failure. It's a smell you know all too well, simultaneously repulsive and yet darkly appealing. Musty with a sharp tang, but also a remnant of lost sweetness, like a rotting mango that's been swaddled in a coat from your grandfather's attic. What you're smelling is your own body odor, of course. Nothing a shower and change of clothes couldn't fix. People sometimes complain there are no real communists left in Martinaise, but you can smell their presence. They're out there, waiting for you to join them. Incidentally, during the waning days of the anti-centennial revolution, a number of Revacholian communards constructed elaborate hideouts in abandoned root cellars, hollowed out tree trunks, and even residential sewage tanks. This latter phenomenon gave rise to the early anti-communist slogan, "The future's bright when you flush out the white." First, you'll have to locate the remaining communists in Martinaise. When you get near to someone with revolutionary potential, your nose will give you the signal to establish contact. Again, no, it won't. Any olfactory response you perceive will be strictly psychosomatic. Judging from the bust of Krasmazov and other revolutionary paraphernalia you discovered, it seems that the Capeside apartments may be a hotbed of communist activity. You should begin by interrogating those lawless malcontents at the Dock Workers Union. They're an obvious place to start. You'll discuss the monumental world historical task that lies before you. You'll engage in rigorous and spirited debates about Mazovian theory and practice. but mostly you'll probably complain about other communists. Not at all. Complaining about other communists is one of the most important parts of being a communist. Here we go. Wake, brave worker, 'tis no time for bed. Fight till there's no slaves below, and no masters o'erhead.
Special thanks to my patrons, Justin Wood, Hobbs, Koopy Vegeta, Gunrunner, Water and Bat. You can join my patrons at patreon.com/HoldenGatsby, follow me on Twitter @HoldenGatsby, and follow my Twitch at twitch.tv/HoldenGatsby. Don't forget to subscribe to both of my channels. Thanks for watching, bye.